Arnie and Gail both covered a lot of what I would, no, that's great, so we can talk about more stuff. But I do want to highlight a few things and go back to something that Gail was talking about, public policy and how we treat each other. And I've heard it said on one of those great TED Talks that government is what we do together when we can't do it alone. And this is one of those areas that we can't do alone and we can't ignore, and it's our responsibility. And this is the reason that this has got to stay in our purview. It's our responsibility to take care of our own. The other part of that is that the reason that it's our responsibility is that when we take somebody's liberty away, which is essentially what we're doing in this case, we should always be doing that with great restraint, first of all. And then we should always be looking for the opportunity to restore that liberty. Those are our brothers and sisters, and Donna and Arnie does not only put you on the spot with these things, he drags me into things. So he brought me to the Episcopal Diocese one day and said, hey, there's this great committee, come and talk to them. And then by the end of it, I was commissioned by the bishop to stay on the committee. So he's masterful at this type of stuff, dragging folks into these things and never letting them up. But we love them. And this is what we talk about. Gail read the resolution, and it's restorative justice is what we should be looking for, because most of the folks, going back to the numbers that Richard was giving at the beginning, that end up incarcerated are troubled and need us. And they need that restorative opportunity, not just for us to lock them up, throw away the key, and feel safe, because it's not even true. We're not just safe because of that. So this is where we get the backwards process that Arnie described, where first we start with an assumption that we need a shiny, new, big prison to lock more people away. And that there's this other assumption that, well, private industry can do everything better, so they must be able to do this better too. And one of the heartening things about this last gubernatorial race is that nobody was running who thought that private industry could do this better. It came down to Maggie Hassan and Ovid LaMontagne, and Ovid LaMontagne and Maggie Hassan both said, this is something that belongs to the state. It's immoral to give it to a private company to be in charge of these people's life. And they were both right. We see the examples over and over again in other states. I'm looking over here. Arnie's got this great study that's available on Arnie's website, the FSC website, Private Prisons, the Public's Problem, a quality assessment of Arizona's private prisons. And we were lucky enough to have Carol N. Isaacs from Arizona to come and talk to us about the experience in Arizona. These turned into warehouses for prisoners. Arnie talked about how this proposal was comprehensive and included psychiatric services and a number of services and high-risk incarceration. And these companies don't want any of those prisoners, and they don't accept them. The contract, when it is finally drawn up, will always make the state take full responsibility, the way we do now, for those prisoners who coincidentally are the most expensive to treat and care for. They start cherry picking who stays in their prison, because now the RFP said 80% occupancy, but when the negotiations go through for these contracts and in subsequent contracts, these companies have a lease with the state. It's expensive. It continues to be more expensive over the years, and what they do is they change the terms of the agreement to be more favorable to them and to require more occupancy. Arizona just changed their program to 100% occupancy. The state must guarantee that the prison is 100% full, or that gives the private prison companies free rein to decide where they bring prisoners in from, how they fill those beds, and they will not take the unhealthy prisoners. They'll cherry pick. They'll take their contract. Will give them free rein to decide who stays, who gets moved to another one of their facilities. If it's more expensive to deliver health care here, they'll send the sickly prisoners to other states where it's less expensive to administer health care to them, and they'll keep the healthier, younger prisoners here, and they will. Prison guards are not paid very well in these facilities. They're susceptible to corruption. They can be bribed to make sure that somebody starts a fight right before their parole and gets locked up again. And this cycle continues and continues and continues, and it becomes a warehouse, and these folks stay incarcerated for the majority of their life, when what we have now is that the majority of folks in our system are going to be there for less than 5 years and be released. They play up, we play up this boogeyman that every prisoner in there is this hardened, terrible criminal. Most folks are going to be out in 5 years living next door to us, so we had better take care of them and help them and treat them. So we've got this backwards system that we came up with this assumption that we need to lock more people up. Whereas what we normally do with just about everything else that we deal with in the state is say we have a problem. We need to do an assessment of what our needs are. We need to assess what our physical plant is, whether we can deliver services, how we alleviate these cost items, and how we're going to tackle the problem together. Then we decide what those cost and what we're willing to pay for and what we're not willing to pay for, and we craft our legislation, and the legislature votes on it, and the governor signs off on it, and sometimes we all get to vote on it. Not this time. This time it went straight to an RFP. It's been locked away in a closed process. Nothing's been open about this, aside from what's slipped out, and it could come down to a vote of the 5 executive counselors. And whatever the governor decides to do or not to do, which is where we have this really sticky problem. And I wish I could have cut straight to this, but I try to remind myself that I've been dealing with this for 2 years and not everybody has. I'm very frightened of where we are right now, because what we have is no public will to give full operation of these facilities to a private prison operator. That's a good thing. What we're left with is this possibility of being sold a bill of goods by any one of these companies to build and lease back a facility that we don't need. They, like Arnie said, they make their money. They really want to get that maintenance contract. They'll get the maintenance contract and they'll say, well, if we're going to build this facility, we're going to have to make sure that we take care of it, so we're not going to build it unless you give us the maintenance contract for 20 years. And then it'll get expensive, and we'll have a cash crisis. The economy goes up and down, we'll have a cash crisis at some point, and they'll say, well, we'll give you a few points off of that lease, but we want to take care of medical services, and we have somebody that will do that for you. And we want to take over security services, and we have somebody that will do that for you. And this is the experience in other states where they keep clawing back. In Louisiana, so this CGL company who partnered with LaSalle. LaSalle's history is that they started out as a nursing care company in Louisiana, and they were delivering the nursing care at a county facility. And the county was in much the same predicament that we are now. The economy was bad, they cash-strapped, they needed a bailout, and LaSalle said, we'll build your new prison, and we'll give you a couple $1 million so you can buy your buy new cars for the sheriff's department and put a few new sheriffs out there. And, but we want a nursing services contract for the next 20 years. And they got it. And then they hired somebody who had done prison security, and they said, well, you know what, we'll take over and we'll train your force and we'll give you a few points off of the lease. And they were operating the entire facility before long. And this county government went around the state and said, hey, this is great. We're getting boatloads of money. They throw it at us, and we're doing all sorts of stuff, and we get to lock more people up in that jail. We get more sheriffs out in the street. The percentage, and they don't have a total number that's higher than the entire nation of China, but the percentage of incarcerated people in Louisiana is higher than the entire country of China. There are more people per capita in Louisiana incarcerated than the entire nation of China. And LaSalle is king down there. They run all of these little county facilities, and they bid on this cooperative joint venture with CGL, who is sitting right now as the most likely potential vendor that could sneak in and grab this thing. And they will sell it to a lot of people by saying, we're going to reduce your costs. And the biggest sell is that we won't have to put it in front of the legislature for a bond, for the legislature to vote on a bond like we normally do. We say we want to build a college, and the legislature gets to vote on issuing a bond, and we issue the bond on the market, and that's where we get our money, and we build our college, and we pay back the bondholders over the term of the bond. This won't be on the books. This will be completely off of the books. It'll be an appropriation every year to pay a bill, just like our heating bill or something else. It'll be an appropriation, and it'll just be off the books, not the way that it is right now. If we built it ourselves, and we need a facility, and we could actually not have a women's facility or have a much smaller women's facility if we would commit to some treatment programs. But you know, that's something we ought to tackle by assessing our needs, deciding what is best, and working together to decide that we as a group are going to do together what we can't do alone. And that's where we should be heading, not the way we've done.